Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. We'll be joined in moments by my co-host Glenn, but for now we're going to talk about the biggest news in computers and computer security, which is a massive exploit that you need to know about whether it impacts you or not, because it's actually that big. At least I think it is. This is an exploit in AirPlay on the Mac and on an iPhone and iPad and everything else. So iOS and Mac OS are both susceptible to this. And worse yet, it is a zero-click install, which means if you're exposed, they can attack your machine, install their code, get remote code execution, and even would create a worm from there to spread to other devices on the same LAN segment or the same Wi-Fi without you even knowing anything has happened. And so it's kind of a scary one. If you have 18, I'll cut to the chase, and it was fixed in 18.4. So, and I don't know the Mac OS version or if it has been patched in Mac OS yet, but 18.4 on iOS is when it was fixed. And the big thing is you want to turn on AirPlay. And if you have the AirPlay receiver enabled on your phone or your iPad or in your Mac OS, you want to make sure that you don't have it set to everyone. You want to have it set to me only or authorized user only or contacts only on the iPhone, I believe. Contacts probably not good because now anybody that among your contacts that's infected, you will also get infected just by virtue of being exposed if they come near you. Kind of like COVID, I guess, in a weird way. Now my video will get demonetized for saying COVID or something. But so we've got a whole bunch of questions today, and I think we're going to probably get to more of this AirPlay issue later. But for now, let's jump right into some of the questions we got based on last week's episodes. So we're staying in this pretty nice house in Scottsdale, which is an Airbnb. And we take an Uber into town, we have dinner, and a big Uber brings us back. And the Uber driver pulls up to the house. He goes, "Oh, this is Patrick Mahomes' place." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I drove Patrick Mahomes here several times." And I'm like, I don't think so, but okay, thanks. And I guess what it was is it's an Airbnb. So Patrick Mahomes had also rented it. So my daughter, who's kind of an internet stalker / expert, goes online and finds all these photos from his wife. I don't know her name, but Mrs. Mahomes, at this location. And so they went around, her and her girlfriend that was traveling with us, and her brothers recreated the Mahomes family photos with themselves in it in the exact same situations posed. So it was kind of cute, but.
Oh, it's excellent. Yeah. Cause your daughter and her friend are at the front door, and then your two sons are on the same couch that she took a photo, and it's just priceless. Yeah. It's most excellent.
You had to be there, but I was, so.
Yes. I'm not sure that also twigged for me, because I remember you talking to you're in Scottsdale and about the Uber experience and then the Waymo.
Yeah, that was my first experience with Waymo down there.
Yeah, and I really just got back from a one-day trip to LA, and I'd never seen these things before. They're everywhere.
Are they really?
Oh, in LA, you couldn't turn around the corner without seeing this Waymo car and all these spinning things on the outside of it. They were, yeah. But anyways, I thought the Waymo experience is interesting, sort of with your wife's feedback on that.
Yeah, it was very cool. I was very impressed with the way it drove. I mean, we have a Tesla, so I'm fairly up to date. I haven't seen the newest 13, but I've tried 12. And so I'm familiar with what it does.
FSD, the full serve.
Yeah. Full serve driving. Yeah. It brings food to your window. Full self-driving. And so I'm kind of familiar with what it does. And the Waymo was good, except it was more assertive, which I really liked. But it didn't speed. You know, it would get up to 30 in a hurry, change lanes, get it over, do the thing. It was way more algorithmic and pre-programmed in a way than the Tesla, which kind of seeks its way out like a human driver would. But I felt very good in it. I didn't know how quickly it would respond to other drivers making mistakes, but it wasn't going to make a mistake is how I felt. And so to me, it was better than most Ubers. Not better than the best Ubers or a good professional driver, but better than your average Uber. And so I was like, yeah, I'm in for this. So on the way back, I was going to take it. My wife was like, no, it's too slow. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, it took us like 30 minutes to get here. It's an 8-minute drive on the freeway. And I guess I don't think Waymos can go on the freeway yet. So.
And the other thing is, I think there could be some variation, certainly among your Uber drivers, even if you're going in Uber Black or whatever. But the Waymo, I mean, that you're almost guaranteed an absolute consistent experience every time.
Yeah, sometimes the driver is additive. Sometimes the driver is chatty or smelly, and then he's not additive. And I'd rather that he was a computer at that point, so or she.
Okay, Theophilus Thisler I've split that into 3 words that I think are the right words. Dave, you tired or stoned? Never seen you hold that effort to keep your eyelids open before. You seem like a sensible guy who takes relatively good care of himself. You look buzzed. Fly eyes, an Aussie reference. $2 pupils. So Theo's
I
from
remember.
down under, and he's got some comments there, a little bit of feedback, eh?
Well, let me tell you, the way I remember it, I was very relaxed and a little hungry. I don't remember much else.
Okay, so one more here we're going to hit you with, Dave. So Fret Less says $20 a month. That doesn't make you insane. That makes you rich.
I don't think so. $20 a month. I mean, think of me next time you buy a latte. So people spend $20 and much more. You go to a bar now, it's what, $18 for a drink, for a well drink or something. So if you do pretty much anything during the month, you're going to spend $20 on it. And if it's your operating system and you use it all damn day long and it gives you good value, then I think it's worth $20. Do I want to pay $20? No, I want it to be $1 or free. But if it's not going to be those things, I don't think $20 is an outrageous or a frivolous expense at that when you're talking about the actual operating system.
I saw this question a while ago, and I'm like, this morning, as I'm driving back from work today, I'm like, yeah, like I wouldn't like to pay, I don't want to pay $20 a month for Netflix or Crave or whatever else my kids are watching, and cell phones, and holy man, I'm getting $20 to death. And I'm not sure some of those I'm getting my value. And again, I mean, I go back to, for me, it always sort of go back to movie rentals. Back in the old days of the VCR. Right. And I mean, I don't know, $5 it cost you to rent a movie 30 years ago to take home and plug in your VCR. But now we're getting into some of this TPM stuff. So Daniel M. Rec says, okay, a fine explanation about the worthiness of TPMs to secure Windows 11. But if that were the case, why is Microsoft depreciating processors and motherboards that have the requisite TPM version? Says he's got an 8th and 9th generation Intel processors and motherboards with the current TPM standard, but Microsoft doesn't support this configuration. Linux does. He's not hating on Microsoft here. He grew up on MS-DOS 3. He's just baffled by them.
Well, actually, the word you want is deprecating.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Well, sorry, I did read it depreciating, but you're right. So
I had to put the glasses on to do it well, actually. But
yeah.
I believe it's because those CPUs don't support a couple of instructions and AVX 512 and other things they've said that, look, this is the baseline now for a secure system. Here's what we need in order to be able to guarantee you a safe experience. What Linux does, is it less secure, or is it just optionally less secure? And it's like a policy decision. I mean, one of the first things I do with Linux is turn off safe boot because I like to build my own kernel and I can't sign it with a root key and all that kind of thing. So you can't do that with Windows, but you can do it with Linux. So you'll always, I don't know if you'll always, but you'll probably have that option to do it. Windows, they can't do it because if they're going to sell it as a secure system, they can't say, well, they're mostly secure unless you have a computer that has an i8 or not i8, but i9, whatever.
Yeah, unlike you, they're not in it mostly for the security. Right. Mr. Armedo says, you need a TPM? My Windows 10 machines do not have any UEFI, so don't need TMP to secure it, or TMP, TPM.
TPM. Yeah, so you'll be fine on Windows 10 for as long as Windows 10 is supported and available. But once you have to upgrade, and I don't know when the end of life for Windows 10 is, can't imagine it's imminent, but maybe it is.
I thought that was the one that they're stopping support on soon, isn't it?
Is it soon? I should know these things, but I'm on Windows 11, so I don't actually know.
Yeah. That's for the others. CD Dog, 1995. I remember having to phone activate with Windows 7. What made you have to call to phone activate anyway?
So if you could not get a network connection to the clearinghouse, which is where we validated your key, which was on the internet, so you had to have an internet connection. It could be a modem. It didn't really matter. But if you didn't have an internet connection, we had to have some way to send a certain package of data, which was encoded into those digits that you typed in a very clever way. And then the clearinghouse would process that data and send back a confirmation code that you entered. And that had a package of data built into the binary in a very clever way that I didn't invent. It was all the math guys. That's how it worked when there was no internet connection. If you could get rid of the requirement that you be able to activate without a connection, you could do a lot more than we did. But we were limited by the amount of data that you can pack into, what is the five groups of 5 or whatever the key was.
I believe so, yeah.
Plus, you got to put the product key in there, plus whatever payload about the machine and its memory size and hard drive size and system metrics and all the things you want to send up to try and pair it to that machine on top of the product key. And you can only make people enter so much stuff or they'll go crazy. So it's a balancing act.
I can just imagine trying to read out those letters, and D is in, I guess if you're a pilot, you'd be fine. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, but oh man.
Well, now it's all computerized, right? But can you imagine in the early years being the person on the other end that works for Microsoft or whatever contractor they use to be the person that for 8 hours a day listen to people read their pipe and then type them in? And it's a rough job, man.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you worked at 7-Eleven for a while, so it's not totally out of your,
I wouldn't trade you. I'd take 7-Eleven over that one.
Nick Willette says, wait, XP's activation has never been broken programmatically? How is that possible? Hasn't the source code been leaked?
Yeah, the source code probably is out there, but the tool set that actually applies the protection and the cross checks between multiple processes that inspect one another is a thing that happens after the compiler. And that's all I'll say about that.
NDA.
Yeah, I'm trying to, what can I say here? It's not part of the compiler. It comes after. So.
Yeah, so he goes on to say, I can't even imagine how you would protect it from just stripping out that code and compiling a new DLL or EXE.
Oh, yeah, you could build your own Windows if you got the whole entire source base.
Yeah.
Good luck to you, but you could do that. You could just comment out the protection. So,
yeah, he says he's got enough boxed and OEM copies to cover 3 times his fleet of hardware at this point, but having to prove my right to use it is still a thorn in my paw. But I respect the technical achievement. So, yeah, it's good. I like that. I respect the technical achievement. Dan Barker, it was sure easier, NT4, he thinks, to just hold down the 1 key until they filled up.
Yeah, I thought NT4 was 111-1111112. Or maybe that also worked. But at some point, all ones didn't work anymore, and it was like a 2 on the end that worked. But
yeah, so you could still fill it with 1s and then back up and just drop a 2.
That was the hot ticket.
But you wouldn't want to drop a deuce. Okay, let's move on. Sam Sosate. So where were all those bitmaps for the start menu of NT4 stored?
So they would be in a resource DLL, most likely, on the CD key, or on the CD key, on the CD itself. I guess it gets installed to the hard drive. Unless they do it in setup and they selectively just install the bitmaps that are required for your language. And then in that case, it's taking up CD space, but it's not taking up your hard drive space. So,
but I'm probably talking out of my ear here. Didn't all the language stuff get installed in the early days when you're doing that? Because I remember at some point, like actually deleting language stuff off to try and clean things up a bit, but.
No, there are separate language packs. So you wouldn't have Greek language pack, for example, if you install the English OEM Windows. So if you need the Greek bitmap for the side of your start menu, I assume it gets installed by the Greek language pack.
Okay. Trucker Ali Katuk. Dave, the hate for Windows 11 from me is because it makes administration and support extremely difficult. I've been using Windows since Win 2, and only Windows 11 has managed to stump me on where to find the settings for any specific bit. It feels actively enthusiast hostile to me. What's your point of view on this, Dave?
I can see where the new settings can be confusing because things aren't in the same place as they used to be, but I don't think they've removed a lot of functionality that I know of. At least I haven't run into issues. It's like, well, where do you change this now? What do you mean you can't anymore? I haven't hit that. So if you're hitting that's kind of a bummer. But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully it's just harder to find or harder for you to find because you're used to the old way. If they are removing functionality, call that out in the comments. I'd be curious.
Mm-hmm. Except you did encounter that on your iPhone when you were trying to find your AirPlay settings. You couldn't find it.
Yeah, I searched for the word AirPlay in iPhone settings, and it didn't come up with anything. And then I went to General because Glenn told me it's under General, and there's AirPlay. Well, that wasn't a very good search.
No problemo.
But that's also
Peter
my pet
Gerds.
peeve with the start menu and stuff is that you type start and you type Excel and you get it off by one letter. It has no idea. You type that into Google, it knows what you mean. So,
yeah, I think you said that problem was Google solved that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe Copilot can do it today. But.
Whoa. You stepped on that one. Peter Gertis. If the goal was to lock to a particular machine, can't you just get a serial number from the motherboard or BIOS? I don't understand why you would want a key that works on all systems with the same BIOS. BIOS? Someone called out the pronunciation of it. I'm not sure I'm doing it wrong. Doesn't that mean that one key for a system works for anyone?
For any of the systems that match and have the same BIOS, yes.
Okay.
So the reason you can't tie it to like the CPU ID is because people really pushed back on having a CPU ID. So when Intel introduced it and they enabled that you could now request an ID, a unique ID for every processor from the CPU, there was huge pushback because, it can be used for tracking and all kinds of things. And so I believe Intel then made it off by default in the BIOS. So you can't in most cases. Now, the MAC address of the network adapter is fully unique. So yes, I use that. But you're not guaranteed to have a network adapter, or you can spoof it, or you can, spoof your MAC ID is pretty easy. So
yeah, it's a little too precise. Although we have other stuff that's just as precise, but yeah, we've moved on. Strand Loper. I remember running a beta of MS-DOS 6.22 that included peer-to-peer networking that seemed to work fine, but was dropped from the release and only returned to Windows 95. Do you know why it was dropped? Says he's asked this comment a few weeks back, but it may have been overlooked. So, yeah.
No, I saw this comment and I reached out to my old boss on MS-DOS, which rhymes, and I asked him if he remembered, and he said, no, we did no work in terms of networking for MS-DOS. There was an MS-NET package back in those days that was a set of hooks that enabled anybody to add networking to MS-DOS. And so there was probably a Microsoft solution for that, but it was separate from DOS itself, I believe.
Okay. Paperclip 2004. I know OS2 Warp was a joint effort between Microsoft and IBM before 95. How much did that OS2 influence the start menu?
I'm going to have to disagree in the timeline, although I'm not an OS2 expert because I didn't work on it. I came in and I was working on NT. OS2 was effectively dead in 93, 94. And OS2 Warp, I thought, was an IBM effort, not a Microsoft and IBM effort. But I'm not an OS2 guy, so anybody who's passionate about it probably knows a lot more than me. Maybe you can clear that up in the comments as well. That's just my recollection.
Okay. Another pretty specific question here from Front Door. Can you address or find out why the mouse wheel doesn't work ever in disk management?
Disk management? Well, sir, here's my guess. Disk management is so old, it's from NT3.1, the very first. And
how old is it?
Yeah,
sorry,
it's that
there's
old.
my Ed McMahon.
So old that it doesn't use the list view control that got introduced with the Windows 95 UI, and mice didn't have wheels really before that. And they never got it updated to use the list control or list view control. So it's probably still using a list box, a Win32 list box. Why that? Or maybe it's a custom control, but whatever it is, it's not responding to WM mouse move or WM. Well, I don't even know what the message is for mouse wheel anymore. Maybe it's WM mouse wheel, but whatever it is, they're not handling it, and they're not getting the system default behavior because it's so old. It's based on a system control, I think, or a custom control that didn't support mouse wheel at all. Why they haven't added it? Because they just is one of those things, right? It's like, when do we sit down and add mouse wheel support to disk management?
It's low on the list, if it's on the list. Yeah. Now that they watch this video, it'll get fixed.
Absolutely.
That's kind of influence we have.
The disk management guys at home crying right now. Picking on me, man.
Holly Doza. Why does Explorer and everything connected to it have to freeze up until my hard drive spins up when the OS is installed onto an NVMe?
Well, here's my guess. And this is a 20-year-old guess based on my recollection of how the code worked at the time. But there are two types of drives. There's a local drive, and then there's a network drive. And so network drives, you don't ask too many questions about, because if you block asking it for what its volume name is, and it's talking to the network, that could be 90 seconds on TCP IP. Hard drives come back, bing, bang, instant, unless they're asleep. But the distinction seems to be local and remote, not local and awake versus remote. So at some point, it must be doing an enumeration where it needs something from the drive, serial number, volume name, number of bytes free, whatever it is. And it assumes because it's a local drive, I can get that immediately. And it turns out that when the drive is sleeping, you can't. And so it locks up until that information is available to the shell. It shouldn't lock up Windows, but it should lock up the shell that's asking for that information.
Okay. Brian Kowald is going to challenge you on something you've already been challenged about here a few minutes ago.
All right.
What are your thoughts about Windows 10 end of support? I have two perfectly good computers that are not capable of upgrading to Windows 11. What would you do?
If I were you, I'd upgrade to Windows 11. If I were Microsoft, I would sell support for Windows 10 and I'd keep doing it.
But his computers are not capable of upgrading to Windows 11. So upgrade your computers is...
That's going to be the answer.
Yeah,
and I know a lot of people are pretty bitter about that, but at some point, like I said, they've got to draw the line somewhere and say it's secure from this point forward. But I don't like yanking the rug out on the people that are dependent on an operating system that doesn't have that hardware functionality. So I would, if it were up to me, I would prefer that they continued updating Windows 10 for as long as it's really relevant. Whether they charge for that, I don't think it's a free service because they got developers working on that kind of thing. So,
okay. Dr. Doodle SQ Basic Asylum. Hey, Dave, yet another terrific video. To be honest, however, I didn't understand a word of it. See, my only goal is to uninstall, disable, remove, delete, break, abolish, or demolish the start button and menu altogether, replacing it with the infinitely superior program manager a la Windows 3.1. So how do I do this?
How do you do this? Believe it or not, I know how to do this.
Holy cow.
You go into Registry Edit, and you go to HKey Current User, Software, Microsoft, Windows NT, Current Version, WinLogon, and you create a key called shell, and you set the value to progman.exe. And I absolutely guarantee that if my memory is correct, that will change your shell from the Explorer to Program Manager.
Not a guarantee.
Not a guarantee.
Dahlia695. I'm legally blind. I wish they would please make dark mode consistent throughout Windows. I'm getting very tired of having to invert my screen every time an older dialog pops up. Not to mention that large areas of white screen makes my entire screen very difficult to read. Come on, Microsoft. This is 2025 already. Can't you patch the older UI code so it can do dark mode?
Yeah, I saw this question earlier before, and I even went into the Microsoft forums and I posted his question paraphrased. And my contention is that's an accessibility issue for people with disabilities. And so it's something they should fix at a higher priority than just an aesthetic, hey, it doesn't look as nice issue. I would agree with him that it's something that should be fixed for those reasons. Even if the market is small, the people that are dependent on screen readers are so dependent on them that you kind of want it to be a decent experience.
There was another, I think in our last Shop Talk episode, there was another piece. I talked about the sort of the age of the device manager window, and I think you had made a comment, some other thing related to dark mode not working in some feature. Now I know it works in Task Manager now, but there's a couple other elements in Windows 11 where dark mode doesn't have any effect. Right. Yeah. So that's on the list there. Marco Salvas. Hi Dave, love your videos. Wonder if I could get your clarification on something that I remember from back in the day. Was the Win95 start menu a different Explorer.exe process? It says he seems to remember being able to close, as in terminate the start menu program by clicking it twice, then Alt and space, then choose close. It would leave the taskbar intact, but no more start button, nor did Explorer close.
No, I think in that case, you're just closing the window that is the taskbar or the start menu. And so you've basically brought up the system menu for the tray and then picked close, and it winds up closing that, maybe even exiting its message loop, but the desktop one is still going. Now, if you're on NT4, we had an option where you could run every desktop window, like every folder window, as a completely separate process. So if you have 10 windows open, you'd have 10 explorers, kind of like if you have 10 tabs, you'll see 10 Chrome processes now. But that was a little heavyweight for the day. But if you had the memory for it, it was a more secure way of doing things. So we gave you that option, but it was not on by default.
Oh, okay. Bowling Holt. Love your videos. New subscriber. But wasn't Program Manager introduced in Windows 3.0?
Yes, but that's why my verbiage is so precise. I didn't say it was introduced in 3.1. I said it was popularized by 3.1.
Okay, excellent. Words matter. Yeah.
And you should subscribe to this channel if you want to see me burn more people with comments like that.
And other quality programming.
Well, actually, before we go on, I should note that when I was looking at the analytics on the Dave's Garage channel, generally about 75% of my viewers are already subscribed, which is a pretty high ratio, but and I'm very thankful for that. On this channel, it's more like 25%. So all the people watching probably aren't subscribed already, or 75% of them aren't subscribed. So I will remind you at this point to please subscribe to the channel so we can build a little subscriber base on this channel. And it's not going to cost you anything, and it's not going to give you any problems other than maybe once a week you get my face popping up in a thumbnail. You can unsubscribe if it bothers you. So
yeah, and if you're facing a problem, then mine is. So either way, you're guaranteed to get at least one problem a week. So yeah,
there you go.
That is a guarantee. Jeff Sheeler. I recently bought 2 new computers with Windows 11, and when I logged into OneDrive, it started putting desktop icons from my Windows 10 computers on the new computer, even when the programs are not installed on the new computer. When I shut down OneDrive on my Windows 10 machine, a bunch of the icons that were there on the Windows 10 disappeared, so I had to reinstall them back to the desktop. Why would Microsoft make OneDrive copy the icons to all computers with being logged into OneDrive?
Well, because you want all of that content to sync amongst all your machines. And if your desktop folder is one of your folders that is synced by OneDrive, and I don't think mine is because I think mine set up a little different, but you probably do want that behavior. And the only thing is, let's say you have Excel on one computer, so you have an Excel file on your desktop. It's going to sync that to another computer. That computer doesn't have Excel. There are, I think if you double click on it, it'll help you find Excel and so on. But that's the biggest downside. So
there must be something in his settings that he's got his desktop synced.
I think that's
OneDrive.
the default, as far as I know.
That's the default. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is on Mac OS too. Once you've got Apple iDrive or whatever they call it going, it syncs your desktop as well amongst your machines.
Is that part of that handoff sort of continuity aspect in the Mac OS?
It's maybe part of that experience. It's more just a cloud drive service.
Right. Okay. Oh, right. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. Part of that experience. That's the correct language. Verbiage. No, it's only one word, so it'd be language. Mr. R. Meadows, you say that no version of Windows was. You say that no version of Windows was not made from scratch. So no version of Windows was made from scratch. But 9598 is not related to NP WinXP in any way. I suppose you might say the start menu was graphed on. Were there other things from 95 that leaked into NT?
Well, all the user interface and shell.
Right.
Yeah. We worked on it and tweaked it and helped make it more NT ready and things like that, but it's still the same code. And even the Win32 interface or the Win32 API, this is something I'd have to ask Mark about, but I assume they had access to the Win30 or the Win16 source code. So they weren't like clean rooming the whole Windows API. So is the code for Windows 3 copied into NT? No, but there's certainly a lineage there. So it's never been a clean sheet because of backward compatibility. So
now you also stated in there that's something I might have to ask Mark about. Is there any expansion on that little? Oh,
Mark Lukowski. He's the, I don't know if he was the architect. He was the big cheese of the Windows kernel, and he wrote the Win32 API, or was one of the guys that did it. So, and he's somebody I'd like to interview for the channel. So we'll probably try and do that.
When the calendars align, that will happen. 50 Shades of Beige. Beige. Oh my God. 50 Shades of Beige. Wow. That was, I flubbed up some other ones earlier, but that one was bad. Lots of tech tubers are recommending using LTSC licenses. There are a bevy of reasons why this could be a bad idea depending on the use case. Can you explain to people what LTSC is and why it might not be a good option for the average consumer in 2025? Or in contrast, why you would recommend it?
Well, you kind of caught me with my pants down, so it's a good thing you can't see my pants. But
oh, David Letterman,
I don't know.
I'm not wearing any pants.
Exactly. So LTSC, I believe, is long-term support contract or long-term support something, which is another way to get a Windows license. And it turns out not to have all the baggage and free offers and everything else that you're accustomed to in consumer Windows. Apparently, there are downsides. I've never done it. I've never had that kind of license. So I can't speak intelligently to it. So I'm going to defer to the comments on that one and let me know in the comments so that I know and all the other people know what are the downsides to using an LTSC license.
So if this LTSC license, as you speculate, sort of has none of that advertising and less stuff in it, isn't that how is that different from that thing you stated before that, you know, for a professional clean version you'd be willing to pay a certain amount per month? Is that
Well, it may be that it's the business version of Windows.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Davey
I don't know
Boy,
the costs or anything like that. So
yeah, it might be like where you have to be what's that? You have to be rich, like it might be $20 a month or more.
or 25 even, you don't know.
Sorry. I mean, it's not meant to be ignorant, just meant to be a callback. Davey Boy, 1978. As you worked on DOS, what did you copy from Gary Kildall?
Oh, I stole his yellow tie and his lack of executive function. And I didn't know Gary. He's passed away now, of course, but I did not know him. I never met him. But the one story about how Microsoft beat him out in order to get DOS included in IBM's PC instead of CPM. The story, it's been embellished so many times that he was like, I'm not talking IBM. I'm going out on my plane and I'm going to fly around today because I'm just a cool guy. I think he didn't like that kind of negotiation and the actual executive function. I don't know if he was on the spectrum. I don't know if he had autism. I don't know any of that stuff. But for me, I don't want to be in that situation either. And so I defer a lot of stuff like that to my wife. Can you please handle this interaction with people that I don't want to talk to? And she, graciously does a lot of that stuff for me. I would not have my wife just like handle the IBM contract for me because I probably got some input, and it's my operating system. So I should probably be there to answer the questions. And she got stuck in a situation where IBM had a really brutal NDA in those days. And it was essentially, anything you tell us is public information. Anything we tell you is confidential trade secret information. And we're IBM, so katoosh. And so she wouldn't sign it. And so IBM went away. And they lost the opportunity to put CPM in with the piece. I mean, it did come later, but as an option. But it was not the built-in operating system for the entire run of IBM PCs because of that.
It's interesting you mentioned that, a certain executive function, you just sort of pass that on to your wife. And I don't know where it comes from for me. I can't order food on the phone, like phone a restaurant or a pizza place. And I just I cannot and have not done that. And same with drive-throughs. I can't do drive-throughs, man.
You got to write it down.
I got to go into the store.
Write it down.
I can go into the store. I can stand at the counter. I can't do it through a drive-through thing, and I can't phone and order. I don't know. It's some weird. Probably started with one incident, and then it just scarred me for life. So
right.
So my wife does all that stuff for me, and I'm grateful. David R. Wait, Bob at Microsoft? Microsoft Bob?
Oh yeah, I can see your confusion, but there's Microsoft Bob and there's Bob at Microsoft, and there's no relation.
Yeah.
No relation.
Yeah. Well, one is ballast on the WinNT, so.
Yeah, we wouldn't call the other Bob ballast. That would be rude. Hey, he was ballast on the team, basically. He's holding us down. No, Bob was a genius. He still is. So.
Yeah. The real life Bob.
Yeah, not the cartoon character Bob.
Not the Microsoft Bob. Slightly less genius. Bernhard Baumgartner. Could you someday also make a video about the dreaded Windows registry? How it came to be, what's under the hood, its role in Windows, and why Linux doesn't have or need one?
Yes. And it's not that Linux doesn't need or have one. They use a different approach, and it has its own upsides and downsides. So it'd be a good episode, I think, to compare and contrast. What are the choices? And I think one of the guys that worked on it was John Vert, who I talked about in my Blue Screen episode. And I want to interview him at the same time as Mark so I could talk to him about the registry. But I should do an episode on the registry, and I should do it by being informed by him as to what the original motivations and reasons were for all this stuff. So,
okay. K7 PLC. When you were at Microsoft, did you ever collaborate with other companies, Microsoft clients? Any feature requests, bug reports, stuff like that?
No, they pretty much kept us autistic people away from the customers. There's one exception.
For your protection or the others?
For theirs.
Yeah.
There was one exception where I think I was working with Goldman Sachs on some issue, and it was in a component that I had ownership of, and it got escalated up to the point where we need to talk to a dev, and that's not very common. You're not going to call Microsoft and get the dev assigned for remote desktop to come and debug your client connection. There's just too many people. But if you're Goldman Sachs, maybe you will.
Yeah. Lana Tirchka. Question. As someone learning to program Windows apps in C, is there a tipping point where learning C++ becomes a necessity? And then says, so far, for me at least, C seems to do everything wonderfully. Maybe C++ if handling 100 windows as objects or some such? Thanks, MP.
It's not so much about, well, it is about the complexity, I guess. That's
right.
That's a good way to look at it. So you can do anything in C that you can do in C++. It's just more work, and people did it before C++ came out. What C++ and polymorphism and encapsulation and object-oriented programming give you is the ability to package up concerns that are related into one piece of code. And so here's an example. I'm writing a Tempest AI in Lua and Python. And on the Lua side, and on the Python side, but on the Lua side, I have everything packaged up into, there's an enemies object, and there's a player object, and there's a game object, and a level object. And the level object keeps track of everything about the level. And you can guess the enemies object keeps track of anything about the enemies. And so that's better than having, 50 top level functions that all kind of do similar things, but one does it for enemies, and one does it for levels, and one does it for the player, and so on. And so by having that code factored out into common modules that you then use for the objects based on what kind of type they are, it starts to make a lot more sense, and it keeps the code a lot more manageable. So I have a file state.lua, which has all my object states, which are my enemy state and player state. And I could break that out further. I could have player.lua, which is the player state if it was complex enough. And so it gives you a great way to separate your concerns and your code and your implementation and the logical design in a way that's easy to manage in a much larger and more complex project. But it can still be done in C. It's just easier to manage in C++.
Right. Okay, great. Atrede Chibico. Hey, Dave, longtime fan. Question for you as someone on the spectrum that has written a few books. I'm an Office Apps and Services MVP looking into writing my own book on Microsoft UC stuff. What's your experience, advice on finding a publisher and motivation to get started? So I've previously worked as a contract editor for a tech publisher and just found that the resistance to getting started with my own book with them was really off-putting.
Yeah, I did not go. I looked around a little bit for an agent and a little bit for a publisher. And, the advances I was hearing were like $3,500 or $5,000 or things like that. And then that'd be nice, but it's not really a motivation to sell the whole rights to it. So what I wound up doing, and because there's no guarantee they're going to market it. If it was like, we'll publish your book and we'll market it like a Stephen King book, well, that would be wonderful, but they're not going to do that for you as a first-time author. It's going to be up to you to promote it. It's going to be up to you to get the media deals or go talk on radio shows or whatever you're going to do to promote it. And so at some point, why not do it yourself? And that's what I wound up doing. I went with Amazon's self-publishing thing, and they do the paperback, they do the hardcover, they do the ebook, and they do the audiobook. So
there you go.
I mean, I had to produce all those things, but
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's more work, but you also get probably better compensation than you would from a publisher.
Right. Yeah. Rick 1368. Question. How does your patience hold up when working on retro stuff? I forgot how slow things were back then, and after the third Windows needs to restart message within 20 minutes, I usually have to walk away and do something else to maintain my sanity.
I was thinking about that because I saw this question when I did a scan a couple of days ago for questions. And on the retro stuff, like I'm trying to do a PDP 1183 right now. And I've got all the hardware installed. I've got a hard drive, my big ST43-400N SCSI 4 gigabyte or 3 gigabyte hard drive. And I'm trying to partition it in 211 BSD Unix. And Glenn once watched me try to do this on a Sunday morning for about 3 hours.
For a little while. Yeah.
Yeah, for a little while. And it was just painful. And eventually I got through it. But
After I
spent
left.
But I spent those same 3 hours today, even with the benefit of my notes from the first time, and I still couldn't get it. But I know there's just one thing I'm missing. There's like one detail I'm missing. And so I go at it. It's like a passionate mission to find what that one thing is. And that's the same when you're debugging code. On a modern system, if I can't figure out why my network isn't connecting, it could be 50 things on a modern Windows machine. I could have it plugged into one of the wrong network adapters. I could have TCP IP unbound. There could be just any number of things so it's like daunting. And I find the old stuff, it's like such a smaller attack surface. In some ways, it's less stressful to debug.
And some of that, again, you've got lots of time and multiple systems, and yeah, it takes time, you know that. So yeah, go grab another beverage.
Yeah.
Find some other little thing to fill in the gap while you're waiting for Windows to restart for the third time in 20 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. Jeffrey Bassett, they got a couple ones pointing at me here. Glenn, you might want to try a Raspberry Pi, a nice, easy, well-supported method to learn a simple Linux, and pretty inexpensive too. I still got to get on that Linux thing. Got my taxes done yesterday, the day before the filing deadline, so frees up my next week to start working on Linux. But I think that what we talked about, I can't remember now, the WSL.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Raspberry Pi is a whole deck. That's when I get up my LED light display on top of my
when you're ready to blink some lights.
Then I'm making the move to the Raspberry Pi. I still got to get up Raspberry Pi doing something out here someday. And then VIX Live. Oh, yeah, this is one that I wanted to. How do I 3D print or buy the base frame for the Mesmerizer like I have? Says he's got the Mesmerizer at eBay from Dave, but really need a more stable base. So that's the customized piece that you did for me and a couple of other folks. So
there's a 3D model, and it's available at nightdriverled.com, and it's in the source folder, in the 3D models folder. There's an STL file, and I think there's G-code in there as well. You can print it out. There's also, I just recently added the back that our friend Rob helped me put together, and it screws to the back. Do you have a back for yours?
Mine is backless.
Oh, it's naked.
Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't be showing that. I have to reconnect my jumper too. There's a jumper I got in the back because you can connect the sensitivity. And when I had it in my office, it was super sensitive, and the exhaust fans it was just flickering all the time. And they said, "Oh yeah, get a jumper and connect." So I tried it out, and that just worked perfect. It would react to my voice and the radio, but not the fans. So that's another.
That's good. I've never actually used that jumper, but I'm glad to hear it worked.
No, it is excellent. Yeah, I can't remember. It fell off, and I can't remember which one was on. But at home, I don't have the loud exhaust fan, so it's not a problem.
Right.
But yeah, highly recommend if you've got access to a 3D printer, even to send it somewhere to get that base. It's pretty slick. So yeah, my next move will be I might have to meet Rob for a beverage after work and say, "Hey, can you bring one of them back plates there for me?" Russ Suter. Here we go. Yeah. Two of these again, Dave. We get them all the time. Where can I get one of those helical LED floor lamps like the one you have in your background? It's utterly mesmerizing. And River Styx Original. Would you please do an entire episode on the construction, soup to nuts, of the swirl lamp, also known as the helix lamp? And then he says a bonus would be one on the 8-point star umbrella, including instructions on weatherproofing and powering it. And yours crapped out on you or something, did it? Or you had to replace it? Or sorry,
the wind blew it over too many times.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it actually broke.
It's been upgraded.
Well, I did. I rebuilt it, and then it got blown over again, and it got, broken. And eventually, it was like, I gotta get a new umbrella, and I can't really transfer everything over without rebuilding the thing. And I'd already built it twice, and I hate building anything the second time, let alone the third time. So same with the spiral lamp, because I already built one. I don't really want to build one for the channel, but I think here's my thing: when I get to be 1 million subscribers, I'm gonna do the spiral lamp episode. That's how I'm gonna celebrate.
So folks that aren't subscribed got to subscribe, and if you're subscribed, then send it off to someone else and tell them to smash that subscribe button. No, don't.
Yeah,
smash
exactly.
It.
Just hit it lightly.
You might even enjoy some of the content. Who knows? Yeah. Chem Ancient Wisdom. Dave's garage is different from Dave's attic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
the attic is about 8 feet above the garage, or 10 feet. And what am I saying? I got 12-foot ceilings in here, I think. So
you still do both shows from the same place.
Well, one's in the attic and one's in the shop. They may look the same to the casual observer, but I'm sure they are, fundamentally different somehow.
Well, that's because you have intentionally established your attic to be exactly identical to your garage setup, because that's how you roll. Yeah. Yeah. Because
it could be a green screen. You don't know.
Yeah. $20 a month. I mean, $20 is $20. There are two different channels, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make sure you're subscribed to both.
Yep.
I'm really working that one today.
And the Dave's Attic one, again, for all these folks, and most of the folks know already, this is the one where we talk weekly and we answer questions from both channels. So
right.
Participate on both, but this is where the questions happen. RD2K, what happened to the garage? Not sure what he's getting at, but maybe your garage doesn't look like a garage because it's got like fancy lights and stuff in it, but there are definitely...
It's got a bay window, and it's got a bunch of toolboxes and
bay window,
boxes.
like every good garage.
Sorry. And a toolbox and a bunch of LEDs. So yeah, it doesn't look much like a garage in this picture. I'll grant you that.
But from your view, it's definitely garage. What you're looking out to your left.
Yeah, although it's carpeted here, which is a little weird.
Oh, there you go again. Bay window and
Kitchen
carpet.
counters.
Yeah. When you're talking about your garage, don't mention the bay window and the carpet.
Well, that's the thing. It's the shop, right? So there's the shop in the garage. People always ask me, why do you say, welcome to my shop? This is Dave's garage. It's because Dave's shop is in Dave's garage, which is in Dave's home, which is on Dave's property. So that's kind of the...
And that portion of your garage beside where all the cars are is essentially, in the last 5 years has become your office and
it's studio
area.
Electronics and computers. And...
Yeah, all the stuff you're doing in there now on the computer and all that you used to do in your actual office in the house. But once the LEDs entered your equation, It's like, okay, this is not appropriate to have an electronics shop in the house, in the office. So you kind of migrated. So it's a shop, but it's your computer in your office and your man cave in the garage that you call Dave's garage and Dave's attic. Yeah.
All in
Excellent.
one. There you go.
Okay. 2 more here. Reliant Turbo says, since the main channel is Dave's garage, very good, Reliant. You got that right. Can we get a car tour? Says he's a car guy as well as a computer guy. So that would be pretty cool. And that's how I sort of describe you, a car guy and a computer guy.
Yeah, I think there's a number of us. Not enough to support a full channel. Otherwise, I would have done like computers and cars. But I actually have a car that's been out for restoration for 5 years, 8 years? I don't know, some long ass time now. 5 years, I guess. Oh my God, I think it's 2013. I don't know. I'd have to look. It's a long time.
No, it's not that long.
Not that long, no.
Because, it'd be
2018 maybe?
Yeah, I think it's, is it? I remember seeing a video of your brother when he was over there. You got chopping the roof off the
donor car.
The donor car. And that
whatever it is, it's been at least 5 years.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. And so that car is finally coming back this year. And I will do an episode on that car. And I will do an episode on its sister car, which is the car that I've had for 50 years. Or, since I was a kid, because my dad bought it new when I was a baby. Tell the story of both cars and why the one is special and why the other one is special and so on and so forth. Probably won't do a whole bunch of car episodes, but I'm going to do at least one. So.
Yeah. And you got a couple of little interesting cars that might get a mention in that too. Like, the nice old truck and the M3.
Yeah, might as well go through them. I got a 2018 S63 Coupe, not the 4-door, the 2-door, which they don't make anymore. I've got a Rivian. We've got a Tesla S Plaid. We've got a Model Y. We've got
now we're talking about Dave's family's cars.
Yeah, this is just everything in the garage.
These are not just Dave's cars. These are,
Right. And there's like 6 of us, so there's a lot of cars.
Yeah.
And then in my shop here, I've got the old 2003 M3. I got the 2010 Range Rover. I've got the 1970 GMC Sierra Grande Custom Camper and the Pontiac 2+2. So, and then the other 2+2 is coming back. So
there you go. Cool. Last question for you, Dave. Dave Van, 9150. The Friendly Giant was American? You just shattered my reality.
I know that bugged me a little bit when I first found it out too, but, only because it was such a Canadian icon as a Canadian kid growing up, the Friendly Giant. And then to find out that he's actually from Minnesota.
That's a nice synergy between the two countries.
Yeah, it's like Minnesota and Saskatchewan have way more in common than New York and LA. So,
yeah. Anyway, that's another one in the wraps and 46 questions that we fired at you. So
Holy cow. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Glenn. And thanks to the audience as well. Make sure you're subscribed to Dave's Attic if you're not already, so you're not part of that horrible 75% that haunts me in my dreams. In the meantime, in between time, hope to see you next time right here on Shop Talk. This little chair will be waiting for one of you, and a rocking chair for another who likes to rock, and a big armchair for 2 to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage.